meet my little kitty. This is Masya. And believe it or not, Masya's 14 years old. She doesn't look it though, does she? Dear subscribers, for a long time now, you've been asking me to do a video explaining about the types of gear that I use to shoot these videos on. And so I heard your requests again, and I'm gonna do just that in this here video. I thought it'd be kind of fun to go through my camera bag together, and I'll explain to you why I chose the certain gear that I chose, why I bought these cameras and not other cameras, and hopefully you'll learn from it and maybe it'll help you make your own decisions later on down the road. I'm going to tell you right here and now that I'm not going to remember all of the model names, the specific model numbers to all of the gear in here, but I will do my due diligence later, and I'll go through and list all of the exact model numbers as well as links to where you can purchase this gear in the description of this video. Finally, at the very end of this video, I'm going to give you a few tips for how to maximize your GH5 camera. So I recently purchased Panasonic's latest and greatest DSLR, the GH5. I absolutely love this camera. Out of the box, it came with a bunch of new features that I didn't know how to learn about, and I wasn't about to read the manual because that's not how I learn. So I contacted my friend Joseph, who's on YouTube and Instagram as PhotoJoseph, and you should definitely look him up. And I asked if I could take his GH5 online course. I took it. It was absolutely fantastic. I learned a ton about the camera, and I'm going to share some of the videos from his course, a few of the tips that I found most helpful, so that you could learn how to better use your camera. Now, without further ado, let's jump in here and open this beast and show you what I'm rocking. All right, first things first. I'm rocking a low pro backpack. Backpack because it's easy to take it wherever I go. It's carry-on size. I never check my video gear because I don't want it lost, stolen, damaged, that kind of thing. There's a lot of great backpacks out there. Nothing specifically fantastic about this one. I just liked how the pockets were arranged. So on one side you have tons of little compartments for things like batteries. There's SD card slots that I would never actually put SD card slots in because I have a hard case for them. But it is kind of nice to have some lens cloths in here, and just tons of little pockets for cords, that kind of thing. On the other side, we have a same but different kind of pocket. We have a place for pens. That's always a good idea to have a couple pens. I have a pocket where I like to keep my international plug adapters. I also have another slot where I keep all my SD cards, and I have a nifty hard case because your memory cards aren't something that you really want to throw around in pockets that could get damaged. So I keep them locked up in this little thing. Moving right along, it has another pocket that fits a laptop. 15-inch MacBook Pro, because I love screen real estate, so I try and get the biggest, baddest one. Check this out. I really got a kick out of this tag. It's a bag tag that says hands off. Maybe kind of mocking German a little bit. If you're German and you're watching this, I'm sorry, no offense. And then in here you also have a space where you can put an information tag. So should my bag ever get lost or stolen, this hands off thing comes in handy. All right, so this is where this bag really shines. It has all of this. Here's a nice pocket that I think is designed for a flash, but I just keep miscellaneous stuff in there, like microphone cords. I have some camera battery chargers, always good to have a couple of those, because you never want to be stuck on a film gig with no juice. Otherwise, what's the point? Everybody gets pissed and it's no bueno. So here's some microphone cords. I don't know why I actually put them in this pocket. Usually they live in here because it's a little bit padded. And here I just have a couple lavalier microphones because it's good to have backups. So I think I have 3 mics in here and some miscellaneous cords. So those live in there. These live in here. This is like my junk drawer right here in this pocket. It's just like a mishmash of stuff. Everybody needs a junk drawer, I think. And in this top pocket, same sort of thing. Some more mic stuff, like windscreens, that kind of thing, because I always want to be prepared for anything that Mother Nature throws my way. A little hot shoe adapter with an articulating head. You know, I like these little knickknacks, and I tend to kind of go overboard buying them because I think, oh man, I could really use that sometime. And at the end of the day, I don't really use any of them. So here's a little tip for you. Save your money on crap like this. All right, on to the main compartment. So over the years, I've used a ton of different cameras. I've shot on Sony cameras, Sony EX1s, Sony EX3s, Panasonic AF100s, Canon cameras. And basically now, I've gotten rid of all those cameras and now I just have the GH series. So this is the new GH5 that I mentioned earlier. And this is its predecessor, the GH3. I have 2 GH3s and 1 GH5. I don't have any GH4s at the moment. They're a great camera. I just, you know, basically these were in my go bag. I never upgraded to the 4, and then the 5 came out and there was no point in getting the 4. So any of the 3, 4, and 5s are great cameras, but this is kind of like my golden standard now. The reason I chose these cameras sort of happened on accident. A few years back, I bought a Panasonic AF100. It was kind of like a big, ugly, clunky camera. And it was supposed to be the DSLR killer. So at the same time they released the AF100, they also released the GH2. And there's a lot of hype on the AF100, but then some dude hacked the GH2 and just made incredible video happen from a tiny little camera. And so within basically a day, an hour, I don't know how long, the AF100, the big clunky DSLR killer, became obsolete. And I was blown away from the types of videos people on the internet were able to get from the GH2. So I bought one. My jaw dropped when I actually saw that what I could produce with the hack. The only problem was the GH2 hack was unreliable. Sometimes it would work, sometimes it would crash. So not a great camera to take to a professional shoot with you because it was unreliable. So basically at that point, Panasonic got wise. They started producing fantastic DSLRs with great video shooting capabilities. It's probably a better video camera than a photo camera, though it can hold its own in the photo realm as well. So these are what are known as micro four thirds cameras. They have a crop sensor, and you know, there are advantages and disadvantages to virtually every kind of camera out there. The reason I like these is because they're small, they're compact. They also crop the image a little bit more than 2 times, which means that when you start acquiring lenses, the lenses get smaller too. So traditionally, if I was using a full frame camera, this lens, which is 14 to 140, would essentially be half that focal length. And, you know, thus, if you wanted to get a nice zoom lens, you'd have to get a much bigger zoom lens. But because this is a micro four thirds crop sensor, everything gets magnified 2+ times. So you can get away with having a tiny little lens on your sweet little camera. It's very light and very, very friendly for travelers such as me. The other reason I like these cameras is because I have really small hands and they fit so nicely in my hand. They fit. Whereas the Canon Mark III series is kind of clunky and a little hard for me to hold, these fit perfectly. And so that's another reason I love them. And interestingly enough, I want to point out that the GH5 body is a little bit bigger than the GH3. but it's still insanely comfortable to hold. In fact, they made some like little ridges in here that makes it even more comfortable for my little hands. So, thank you, Panasonic. Thank you very much. Another thing you'll notice on all of my cameras is that they all have the battery grips. So this is an additional part that you can buy for your camera. It detaches. And what this basically is just extended battery life. Often I'm shooting in the field, there's not a whole lot of places to recharge. So I just like to go overboard and have enough batteries and enough power supply to never run out of juice. And so after I purchase any camera, I do whatever it takes to purchase more battery life. And for these GH cameras, that simply means purchasing a battery grip. So on this GH5, same sort of thing. You know, you have an attachment which is more battery life. Okay, let's talk about lenses. Here's what I got for you. This is what I'm currently rocking. So I have a Panasonic Lumix 7-14. This is my wide angle lens. I absolutely love this lens. It does kind of distort things when it's at 7, but you know, obviously if you're shooting that wide, you know that that's gonna happen. And you can correct for it later or just enjoy the effect of the edges of your shot looking a little wonky. So that's a great lens. I also have a fisheye lens, which is an 8mm. When I was purchasing this lens, I read a lot of reviews saying that if you have the 7-14, you don't really need the 8mm. But I've actually found that in my workflow, I like the fisheye effect. It's different enough that for me, it justified spending the extra money to get the 8mm fisheye because it's kind of like a cool effect for skateboarding or adventure photography. It's just like a really nice bubbly look. So I went ahead and spent the dough and bought the 8mm. I also have this 25mm Leica Lumix lens. This thing is absolutely delicious. It's super sharp, it's crisp, it's 1.4, so it's great in low light. And because again, this is a crop sensor in the camera, it's a micro four thirds, it's a 25mm lens, but actually it comes out to be more like a 50+ lens. So you can get really nice close up to people. It shoots great portraits. It's also really great for food photography or food video. Green smoothies, #1. Then I had, this was the first lens that I got. It's the 14-140. This is a great little lens, kind of an all-around, you know, somewhat wide-angle lens. It can zoom in pretty good. So this is kind of just something I throw in my bag for, you know, a good all-around. If I need to choose one lens, I often take this one to go shoot video and photos. I also have a couple pancake lenses. This is another one of my favorites, probably the lens that I use the most. It's my 20mm pancake lens. You can see how tiny this thing is. I like this because you don't really have to carry your big bulky camera bag everywhere you go, thus drawing attention to the fact that you have a fancy camera. So when I'm traveling in countries where I feel a little bit sketchy, I just like to get a dirty old bag that doesn't look like anything crazy, wrap this in a sweater, stick it in my dirty old bag, and then I'm not drawing unwanted attention. So I have the 20mm pancake lens, and then on the camera that's filming me right now, I have a similar 14mm lens. And those two are also pretty similar, but there's enough difference in both of them that it, for me, justified spending the extra dough and having both lenses. And finally, my latest addition is this brand new 12-16mm lens. I read some mixed reviews when I bought this lens. Some people didn't like the fact that it's only a 2.8 at its widest at 12 millimeters, and then when you zoom in to 60, it's something at like, I believe it's 5. Honestly though, this lens rocks. It's absolutely incredible. It's crystal clear, it's sharp. I don't regret it in the slightest purchasing it, so all you haters out there, I don't know what you're talking about. Alright, so there are my lenses. Next, I have a rugged Lacy or Lacy or however you say that hard drive. These things are totally awesome. That's a 4 gigabyte drive. I basically just instantly, whenever I shoot something, I bring it home that night and I back it up to this because you never want to lose footage. I've done it once. It totally sucked. It cost $8,000 to recover it, and you just don't want that kind of expense. I also have a little Rode mic with a little dead cat. These are really inexpensive microphones. I think they're under $100 at this point. They're not the best shotgun mics, but they are very small and compact. The quality on these is significantly better than the on-camera mic. So I shoot with them, you know, because it's easy and accessible. And again, not very bulky. I can easily put this on my camera and get drastically better audio. And yet this same camera setup fits in that grungy old backpack I mentioned earlier. It doesn't draw a whole lot of attention to me as a photographer in situations where I don't want the attention. I also have a Lumix flash. Interestingly enough, the GH3 has a flash right there, but the GH5 does not. So to combat that, I have a flash. Boom. No muss, no fuss. What else? These are my favorite wireless microphones. They're the Sennheiser's EW100 G3s. I love these mics. They seem to be the industry standard for like broadcast TV. I see them on sets all the time. Camera crews rocking these things. And basically, you know, they have this thing that goes onto the camera, the transmitter, and then this thing goes on the person, like, you know, boom, wherever. You plug a microphone in there, and this is the receiver, and crystal clear audio every time, no interference. These are quite expensive. I think I paid something like $500 or $600 for these. If you're new to videography, I recommend that you invest in a good microphone because people will tolerate bad video, but they won't tolerate bad audio. So, you know, eventually, definitely pick up a nice little lavalier set. It's a must. I also have this hot shoe extender that basically gives you 3 hot shoe mounts instead of 1. So now instead of 1 hot shoe mount, you have space for several. And your camera also looks like a deer. It has some antlers. And you kind of look like Frankenstein. You're just like, nah. Alright, what else? We have a tripod. This thing is not the best tripod in the world, and the only reason it's in my bag is because it's compact. So it can go from pretty close to a full-size tripod to almost nothing at all. And it fits perfectly in the bottom of my bag. And so that is kind of my go-to tripod for the road, because tripods are clunky, they weigh a lot, and this thing is neither of those things. This thing is made by Me Photo, and I'll include the exact model in the description of the video below, down there. And finally, we have one of these things. It's a lens cleaner. Everybody should have one of these, they're cheap. Lenses get dusty, and these things clean them off, so there you have it. This is what's in my camera bag. I hope you found that helpful. This concludes the show and tell portion of this video. And now I'd like to move on to the promised GH5 tips. As mentioned earlier in this video, I recently took a course that helped me learn how to best use my new camera. It was a fantastic course. If you want to take it, I highly recommend it. Nobody pays me to say that, by the way, and that comes straight from the heart. What I learned was just earth-shattering. It saved me heaps of time too, because reading the manual, not my favorite thing to do. I have a promo code for you guys. It saves you 25%, and the promo code is my name, Sergei. So go to gh5training.com/Sergei and get 25% off the GH5 course.
The GH5 menu system is honestly one of the better designed menu systems that you're going to find on a digital camera today. All of the functions in here are organized into some pretty good categories that make it reasonably easy to find what you're looking for. In the menu system, there is also a built-in help, and you can even create your own custom menu so that you can quickly access the functions that you need and use the most. So let's take a look at the system here. To access it, simply press the menu button on the back of the camera, and on the left-hand side, you'll see a row of icons representing different basic collections of functions. If you're wondering what any of them are, simply press the display button, also on the back of the camera, that allows you to see exactly what each one of these is. So that's the record menu, motion picture menu, custom menu, and so on. To hide that help system, just press the display button again. And that help system will actually be available throughout the menus. You'll be able to bring that up at any time, and the camera will give you a basic description of what that function is for. Getting the best autofocus performance out of your GH5 is more than just setting the right focus mode. It's also knowing how to take control of the areas that you're able to take control of. For example, what point you want to focus on. While things like face detection and 225 area focus are great for a lot of purposes, sometimes you just want to tell the camera where to focus, and you want to do it quickly. That's where a variety of different functions that we're going to go over in this video come into play. The first and most obvious one is the brand new joystick that's on the GH5. This joystick on the back of the camera makes it really easy to navigate around and point at the scene exactly where you want the camera to focus on. It's quick, it's easy, and it's always there. But it's not necessarily the fastest way to do it. It turns out you can use the touchscreen on the back of the camera to control exactly where you want the focus to go. Now, when you're just looking at the back of the LCD, this may seem quite obvious. You can just touch the screen and move it around and position it wherever you'd like. But you can actually do this while the camera is being held up to your face. Let me show you how to turn this on. First, go into the menu setting again and go down to the touch settings. From touch settings, we want to make sure that touchscreen is, of course, on. And then under touch autofocus, we want to set that to either autofocus only or autofocus plus auto exposure. That's really up to you. Personally, I usually set it to autofocus plus auto exposure because whatever I point to is what I want the camera to really concentrate on, both focus and exposure. But for this demo, I'm going to leave it just for autofocus. Then under touchpad autofocus, you have to choose between offset and exact. Now this one is important to understand so that you can set it up the way that's best for you. Now, first of all, when you're not looking through the viewfinder, meaning you're just looking at the LCD and you're touching the LCD while you're seeing it, doesn't matter what this is set to. It's going to work the same either way. When this becomes important is when you hold the camera up to your face and you're no longer actually looking at the LCD, but still using it to control your focus point. When you set it to exact, wherever you touch on the screen, that's where the focus point is going to jump to. When you set it to offset, you can push the cursor around kind of like a trackpad on your computer. You don't have to touch here to make the mouse go there, touch here to make the mouse go here. You can simply touch and push to move that mouse around. It works the same way. Now you might be thinking, well, of course, the exact is a better way to go. No matter where I touch, that's where the focus point is going to go, right? So if I want the focus point to go on the top right, I touch there, bottom left, I touch there, and so on. That's true. However, unless your hands are big enough, you may not actually be able to reach all the way to the other side of the screen when the camera's up to your face. And for me, my hands aren't that big, so I can't do that. So I need to use the offset one. Also, another thing to consider is sometimes your nose can touch the back of the screen, and the camera might think it's your finger and move the focus point to that position. So if you have it set to exact and you bring the camera up to your face and your nose touches the screen right in the middle, that's where the focus point is going to jump to. If it's set to offset though, you have to push that focus point around, and if your nose hits it, all it's really doing is activating the focus point, but it's not actually moving it for you. So that's how I like to set it. I'm going to go ahead and set it to offset here. And now, if I just touch the screen, as I mentioned before, no matter where I touch it, the focus point is going to jump to it because I'm looking at the back of the screen here. I can't put my face up to this, but I'm going to put my hand over the sensor on the viewfinder. So now the camera thinks my face is up to it. The image is no longer on the LCD on the back. It's only through the viewfinder. And now I can move that focus point around by touching and dragging on the screen. And in real life, this is very quick to move around. I can really position this exactly where I want very rapidly. And of course, this works in all the focus modes. So if I go back into my AF mode settings and I go to one area focus mode, and then now again cover up the viewfinder so the camera thinks I'm looking through it, I can move this around very quickly into whatever position that I want so that the camera focuses exactly where I want it to. This is really a fantastic way to work. It definitely takes a little bit of getting used to, and until you do get used to it, you'll find that you're bumping that screen more often than not and possibly moving your focus point when you don't want to. But once you get used to it, it is an absolutely fantastic way to work, and you can really get your focus point set exactly where you want it very, very quickly. You've undoubtedly seen focus racks or focus transitions in video shots before. This is where the focus transitions from one subject to another. It might be a person in the foreground to a person in the background. It might be from a house to the mountains in the background, whatever it might be. The point is that the focus in the scene changes from one subject to another. And when done well, it looks very, very clean. When not done well, it doesn't look so great. With the GH5, you can do this manually, simply by recording video and then racking the focus by hand and trying to get it really smooth and consistent, and more importantly, trying to hit your exact focus point and not overshooting it. Or you can take advantage of the feature called focus transition that's built into the GH5 and let the camera do it for you. So let's see how this works. First of all, let's just take a look at what it would take to do this by hand. If I was recording video right now, I could manually change my focus. And oops, went the wrong way. Let's see, let's try that again. So from here, I want to focus to the back, so I could focus to the back. And I could try that over and over again and try to get a really smooth, really consistent, really even rack. And if you want to do it a little bit slower, a little bit faster, well, once again, you just got to try and do it over and over again. And if you're trying to hit a very specific mark, well, it's a whole different challenge, isn't it? So let's take a look at what the camera has built into it. First of all, you need to be in the custom movie mode to access this feature. Go to the movie menu and then scroll down until you see focus transition. From here, you'll find a variety of options. Focus pull setting is where you set where your focus mark is going to be. So you can set up position 1, position 2, and position 3. Under focus transition speed, you can go from super low to super high. So 5 different options in here to change how fast it'll focus from point 1 to 2 to 3. Focus transition record allows you to start the focus transition as soon as you hit the record button. So you hit record and it will start the transition from position 1 or 2 or 3, whatever you've set in here. Now, this on its own is not terribly useful because usually you want some amount of handles, meaning some footage before the transition actually starts, so you have something to edit around. However, combined with the next feature, it might be useful if you want to automate things. Or you can turn it off and just trigger the focus transitions manually after you've hit the record button. It's up to you. So the next option here is focus transition wait. This allows you to tell the camera to wait 5 or 10 seconds or to not wait at all from the point of when you hit the focus transition button until it actually starts the transition. So combined with the previous feature, this could give you that little delay that you need before it starts the transition. Or the way that I've used it is waiting for the camera to settle down and stop moving when you have it on a less than perfectly solid situation. So for example, once I was shooting at an airport and I had the camera just balanced on the windowsill, shooting through a rainy window, and I did a focus transition from the raindrops to an airplane off in the tarmac. And whenever I touched the screen to set position 1, position 2, and so on, the camera moved a little bit. So by setting in the delay, I was able to program everything, get it all set up, start recording, tap the position 1 button or position 2 or wherever I wanted it to go to, wait for a few seconds with my hands off the camera, and then the camera would automatically start the transition. In this case, we're just going to leave everything off. Let's go up to focus pull setting and set position 1. So the way you do this is simply set the focus manually to wherever you want, and you'll see there is the autofocus button on there. You can tell the camera to autofocus, but honestly, I think it's better to just do it manually. You've got your focus peaking, you can set the precise position that you want focused, and lock that in. So I'm going to go from the first window there that has the company logo on that, and I'll tap the set button in the bottom right corner, and that sets position 1. Now let's go to position 2, and I'm going to focus again on the second logo there, the second little window. So that'll be my position 2. And then in position 3, I'm going to go all the way to the end of the audio interface here, right about there, and set that as position 3. So now I have all 3 of my positions set up, and you don't have to use all 3. You can just use 2 of them, of course. Let's go ahead and tap start, and now we're ready to go. Now I can hit record at this point or not, just to play with it. I'm not going to bother recording, but of course you would normally hit record now. And then as you tap on the position 1, 2, and 3 buttons, the camera transitions from position 1 to position 2, and then to position 3. We're running at the medium speed now, so it's a little on the slow side. If we want to speed things up a bit, you can tap the display set button, go to the focus transition speed, and let's set it to super high. Hit start again, and now we go from position 1 to position 2 to 3. It's a fantastic, fantastic tool. You can jump straight from position 1 to 3, you can change the speed as you go, and you can record the exact same focus transition over and over again. This is really important if you're doing anything with actors and you want to immediately go from person 1 to person 2, or from someone standing there to the building behind them, whatever the setup might be. But being able to get that exact focus rack every time, nail the focus perfectly every time, is critical. And this allows you to do it incredibly easily.